This coin almost ended up being spent on a cup of coffee, but instead, it stunned the collecting world when it sold for nearly $1 million. At first glance, it's nothing more than a quarter from 2015. A coin millions of people tossed into their car cup holders, slid into vending machines, or let rattle at the bottom of their purses. But this coin, the 2015 P-Mint Mark Saratoga Quarter, holds a secret so powerful, it turned pocket change into a fortune. The Saratoga Quarter was part of the U.S. Mint's America the Beautiful series, honoring historic landmarks across the nation. This one, struck in Philadelphia, marked the moment in 1777 when British General Burgoyne surrendered his sword to American General Gates in Saratoga, New York, a turning point in the Revolutionary War. Collectors admired the design, but what no one realized at first was that some of these coins carried a hidden error, and that error would change everything. 4 months after release, the Saratoga quarters circulated without fanfare. Kids spent them on candy, cashiers stacked them into rolls, and banks distributed them by the thousands. But in 2016, rumors began whispering through coin shows and online forums. Dealers were saying something was wrong. Very wrong. One collector pulled a Saratoga quarter out of a roll and noticed something chilling. The strike wasn't normal. Under magnification, the details told a shocking story: doubling on the sword's handle, distortions around the lettering, and subtle flaws in the metal. Errors so rare, they weren't supposed to exist. Soon, collectors across the country scrambled to examine their Saratoga quarters. Most found nothing unusual. But a few lucky ones discovered minting mistakes so dramatic that experts called them once-in-a-generation errors. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At a major auction, a near-pristine error Saratoga quarter, one that showed extraordinary doubling and near-perfect luster, crossed the block. Bidders went wild. The numbers skyrocketed past 5 figures, past 6 figures, until the hammer fell close to $1 million. One man's pocket change had become a life-changing miracle. Imagine the shock. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a coin you thought was worth just 25 cents, only to discover it could pay off your mortgage, your debts, and leave you with a fortune. Collectors were left speechless. Dealers rushed to hunt down more. And everyday Americans started combing through their spare change like never before. This nearly invisible error was why that quarter was worth $1 million. And here's the truth: most people still miss it, but the story doesn't end there. More Saratoga error quarters began surfacing. Some with doubled dies. Others with dramatic off-center strikes. A handful showing weak strikes that left portions of the design ghostly and incomplete. Each one telling its own story of the night shift at the Philadelphia Mint, when a mechanical slip, a misaligned die, or a fraction of a second mistake produced coins that were never meant to exist. And every time one of these errors appeared at auction, the bid soared. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and in the rarest cases, climbing toward that $1 million threshold. But here's where it gets even more gripping: unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, these Saratoga quarters are still out there. They weren't all caught. They weren't all saved. Many are still sitting in change jars, desk drawers, or bankrolls, waiting for someone like you to notice the tiny imperfection that transforms a coin from ordinary to extraordinary. Collectors began calling the Saratoga quarter the sleeping giant of the America the Beautiful series. Because while millions were struck, only a handful contained the rare errors that could change lives, and what's more haunting is that every single day, people unknowingly spend them. A quarter worth $1 million could slip through your hands in the grocery line, get tossed into a parking meter, or vanish forever in a vending machine. This is where your attention must sharpen. If you have a 2015 quarter with the P-Mint mark, that tiny letter right under the motto, "In God We Trust," take a closer look. You're searching for doubling on the details, especially the sword, the hands, and the lettering around the surrender scene. Look for distortions in Saratoga or United States of America. And don't ignore off-center strikes, where the design looks shifted or incomplete. Don't clean the coin. Don't scratch it. Condition is everything. Even a small mistake in handling can destroy a coin's value. But if yours checks out, even a minor error could fetch thousands. A major one? That's the kind of discovery that headlines newspapers and electrifies auctions. Picture it. You're sitting at your kitchen table, turning a coin under the light, and suddenly you see it: the doubled lines, the slight shift in design, the impossible flaw. Your heart races. Your hands shake. You realize you're not holding a simple quarter. You're holding history. You're holding fortune because this exact Saratoga quarter, struck in Philadelphia in 2015, has already proven it can reach values up to $1 million. This exact coin could be sitting in your drawer right now and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in a parking lot gutter, tossed aside as just another ordinary quarter. But when it finally surfaced at auction, it stunned the entire coin world, selling for a jaw-dropping fortune, nearly $1.1 million. Imagine that for a moment. A simple 2001 Kentucky quarter, the kind you could find rattling at the bottom of your change jar, suddenly revealed as one of the most valuable state quarters in history. Collectors couldn't believe it. Dealers rushed to verify it. And one lucky individual saw their life change forever, because of a mistake hidden in plain sight. The story begins in 2001, when the U.S. Mint released the Kentucky State Quarter, the 15th design in the wildly popular 50 State Quarters program. On the surface, it looks ordinary, a proud racehorse peering through a gate in front of Federal Hill, the historic mansion tied to my old Kentucky home. At the bottom, the date, 1792, marking Kentucky's statehood. And on the right, a bold letter D, the Denver Mint mark. But here's where things take a dark and thrilling turn. Among the countless millions struck that year, a small handful came out wrong. A faint error, invisible to most people, but glaring to a trained collector's eye. A doubled image on the horse's reins, a misaligned strike that left part of the mansion blurred, and in some cases, even the D Mint mark appearing distorted, almost ghostly. These tiny details transformed a 25-cent coin into a prize worth more than a mansion itself, and then came the discovery that shook the entire hobby. With one of these rare flaws surfaced at auction, nobody expected much. After all, state quarters were mass-produced by the billions. They were pocket change, not treasure. But as bidding began, something extraordinary happened. The price kept climbing. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Collectors sat frozen. The crowd whispered in disbelief. By the time the gavel fell, the coin had shattered every expectation, selling for nearly $1.1 million. The answer lies in rarity. While billions of Kentucky quarters exist, only a microscopic fraction contain these bizarre minting errors. They slipped past the mint's quality controls, unnoticed, and ended up in circulation, quietly waiting for someone to recognize them. For years, they jingled in pockets, paid for sodas, sat forgotten in coin jars. Until one was finally spotted. Think about it. How many times have you glanced at your change, only to toss it aside? That ordinary-looking 2001 D Kentucky quarter you didn't even think twice about could be hiding a life-changing secret. Collectors say this is the ultimate thrill, the treasure hunt that never ends. Every time a Kentucky quarter passes through your hands, there's a chance, however slim, that you're staring at $1 million miracle. Of first, the mint mark. On the right side of the coin, beneath the horse's mane, lies the letter D. On some of the rarest error pieces, the D is misshapen. It may appear doubled, faint, or even partially missing. This subtle flaw can skyrocket the value. Second, examine the reins of the horse and the gait it leans through. On rare double die examples, you'll notice a ghost-like shadow, lines that look like they were stamped twice. Most people never see it, but under magnification, it's unmistakable. Third, pay close attention to the mansion itself. Federal Hill should have sharp, clean details. On error coins, parts of the structure appear blurred, flattened, or stretched. These imperfections are what turn a quarter into a treasure. But here's the part that chills even veteran collectors. Many people throw these coins away, convinced they're damaged, or dismiss them as worn out. In reality, what looks like a flaw could be a priceless minting error. One man's trash becomes another man's $1 million, and it's not just stories. Real people have found these quarters in the wild. A young collector in the Midwest discovered one in a coin roll and nearly fainted when experts confirmed its value. An elderly woman, who had saved quarters from each state in a jar, unknowingly held one of the rarest Kentucky examples ever seen. She thought it might be worth $20. Dealers told her it could sell for more than $1 million. Your hands trembling, your heart pounding, as you realize the coin you've kept in a dusty jar could change your life forever. The truth is, not all state quarters are equal. Some designs, some mint marks, and some production runs are far more prone to errors than others. The Denver Mint, in particular, has a history of letting small mistakes escape into circulation. In 2001, as the presses hammered out millions of Kentucky quarters, something went wrong. A small misalignment. A worn die. An unnoticed doubling. And in those tiny slips of machinery, history was made. The answer is chillingly uncertain. Experts believe fewer than a dozen of the million-dollar examples have ever surfaced. That means the odds of finding one are unbelievably small, but not impossible. And that tiny chance is what keeps the hunt alive, because every coin hunter knows it only takes one. One discovery. One lucky pull from a roll of quarters. One overlooked coin at the bottom of a drawer. One moment that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. And if you're wondering whether the hunt is worth it, just ask the man who sold his Kentucky quarter for $1.1 million. His life was never the same again. Always check the mint mark, that little d. Study the horse's reins. Inspect the mansion's details. Use a magnifying glass. Look for doubling, distortion, or faint shadows where they shouldn't be. And above all, never dismiss a coin that looks unusual, because what looks like a flaw might just be a miracle. This coin almost ended up in a handful of loose change at a gas station, but instead, it shocked the entire collecting world when experts revealed its hidden secret, a 1978 quarter from Denver, with a tiny minting flaw that turned pocket change into a $1 million miracle. Now imagine this. You're holding a dull, ordinary quarter. You toss it onto the counter without a second thought, but what if that very coin, the tiny piece of metal you nearly gave away for 25 cents, could have changed your life forever? That's the haunting story behind the 1978 D-Mint Mark Washington quarter dollar worth up to $1.2 million. Collectors were stunned when they learned about the discovery. Dealers rushed, digging through their bins, pulling out old rolls, desperate to see if they had overlooked one. Because here's the truth, most people miss it. And missing it could cost you over $1 million. Let's rewind to 1978. The U.S. Mint in Denver was churning out millions of Washington quarters. It was routine, mechanical, almost forgettable. But in the middle of that industrial clatter, something went wrong. A die clash. A misstrike. An imperfection in the way the metal blank was pressed. To most, the error looked like nothing more than a scratch, a blur, a flaw in the coin, but to the trained eye, it was treasure. Here's where it gets even stranger. One collector, a man who had been hunting errors for decades, noticed something unusual in the D-Mint mark. He leaned in with his magnifier, and his heart skipped a beat. The mint mark wasn't just off-center, it was doubled, ever so faintly, in a way the mint swore should never have happened, and that tiny detail turned his find into a story worth 7 figures. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At auction, the bidding war began modestly. Dealers raised their paddles. Collectors whispered. Prices climbed past $100,000, then $250,000, and then silence shattered into chaos as one bidder leapt far beyond expectation. By the time the hammer dropped, the coin had soared into the realm of $1.2 million. One man's pocket change had just become $1 million miracle. This is why collectors lose sleep at night. Because the difference between a common coin and a life-changing treasure is often so small, you could miss it with the blink of an eye. A slightly shifted mint mark. A die clash that left ghostly impressions of Washington's profile on both sides. A strike so sharp it made the coin gleam unlike any other. These are the details that transform a 25-cent coin into $1 million legend. There's more. Experts say most of these coins are still hiding. They weren't all found. They weren't all sold. Some are sitting quietly, tucked away in jars, drawers, or forgotten collections. And that means one thing: you could be holding one right now without even knowing it. Collectors were electrified by this possibility. Some scoured rolls from banks. Others opened old coffee cans left behind by parents and grandparents. Every clink of metal carried the chance of destiny, and the stories kept coming. A man in Texas found one in his late father's belongings. A woman in California spotted one while sorting coins for laundry. Each time, jaws dropped, because each time, a worthless quarter transformed into pure fortune. But here's the secret most people still don't understand. It's not just the date. It's not just the mint mark. It's the combination. The 1978 Denver quarter with a specific doubling, a specific clash, and pristine preservation. In gem condition, it can cross the $1 million mark. Lower grades still command jaw-dropping sums, thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands. So while most people spend their quarters without thinking, the sharp-eyed collector sees gold where others see copper nickel. And here's the part that will make your heart race. Experts believe only a handful exist in this condition. Maybe 5. Maybe 3. Maybe fewer. Imagine being one of the few in history to stumble upon it. Imagine that moment when your pulse pounds, your hands shake, and you realize the quarter you nearly dropped into a vending machine could buy you a house, a car, and a lifetime of dreams, but don't think it's impossible. Because every legendary coin was found by someone who never expected it, and you might be next. First, flip over your 1978 quarters. On the obverse, examine the Denver D Mint mark under magnification. Look for doubling, look for odd positioning, look for anything unusual. Next, study the fields and devices for clashing, ghostly outlines that seem out of place. Finally, check the condition. A brilliant, uncirculated quarter from 1978 with these flaws could very well make you a millionaire. Not every scratch or mark is valuable. Many collectors mistake ordinary damage for mint errors. The true treasure lies in those rare, undeniable minting mistakes certified by professional graders. And once certified, the sky is the limit. Collectors were shocked. Dealers couldn't believe it. And one man's small discovery has rewritten the way we see even the most ordinary pocket change. So the next time you hold a quarter, pause. Look closer. Because the 1978 D Mint Mark Washington quarter dollar worth up to $1.2 million is out there. This coin almost ended up in a pile of spare change at a gas station, but instead, it shocked the entire coin collecting world when it sold for nearly $1.3 million. Yes, a 1989 quarter. The kind most of us spent without thinking twice. The kind you may still have sitting in an old jar, buried in a drawer, or hiding in your pocket right now. And yet, this ordinary-looking coin hides one of the most extraordinary secrets in U.S. numismatic history. But what makes this particular 1989 P Mint Mark Washington quarter so valuable? Why did collectors lose their breath when it came up for auction? And how can you know if one of these million-dollar treasures is hiding in your home? The story begins in Philadelphia, at the U.S. Mint. In 1989, millions of Washington quarters rolled off the presses. To the untrained eye, they were all identical: George Washington's profile on the front, the proud eagle on the back, and the P Mint mark declaring their Philadelphia origin. But in that sea of metal, a few rare mistakes slipped through. Mistakes so subtle that 99 out of 100 people would never notice them, yet powerful enough to change a simple quarter into a once-in-a-lifetime fortune. Collectors whisper about these minting errors the way treasure hunters whisper about lost gold. A double strike here, a misaligned die there, even a faint, ghost-like doubling on Washington's profile. Each one is a clue, a signal that you might be holding more than loose change. You might be holding destiny in the palm of your hand. And then came the discovery that stunned everyone. A single 1989 quarter, minted in Philadelphia, carried such a rare combination of mistakes, sharp condition, and historical significance that it set the auction floor on fire. Dealers were gasping. Collectors couldn't believe their eyes. When the gavel fell, this coin had leapt from 25 cents to over $1.3 million. But here's the part that gives chills to every coin enthusiast: no one knows exactly how many of these exist. Was this a one-of-a-kind miracle? Or are there more hiding in boxes, piggy banks, and forgotten coffee tins across America? A man empties his pockets into a glass jar each night, the way we all do. Pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters. For years it sits there, gathering dust. Then one day, while rolling coins to take to the bank, he spots something odd about a 1989 quarter. The shine is different. The strike is sharper. The details almost leap off the coin. He takes it to a dealer, who turns pale. And in that moment, a casual habit of tossing spare change into a jar transforms into a $1 million miracle. Here's the secret most people miss. On some of these rare 1989 P quarters, the details of Washington's hair, his cheek, and even the letters on Liberty show doubling, a minting error called a double die. On others, the eagle on the reverse looks slightly off-center, an alignment error that slipped past inspection. And in the rarest of cases, the coin was struck on the wrong planchet entirely, giving it a weight and feel unlike any ordinary quarter. But here's the catch: condition is everything. A rare error in poor shape might bring in a few $100s. But a flawless specimen, gleaming as though it was struck yesterday, can break records just like the one that soared past $1 million, and this is where collectors feel the rush of adrenaline. Because anyone, anywhere, can stumble upon one of these coins. It doesn't matter if you live in New York or Nebraska, if you inherited a collection or if you've never looked at a coin in your life. The moment you flip over a 1989 quarter and see that tiny P beneath Washington's neck, you could be holding the key to a hidden fortune. The story doesn't end there. Because just when experts thought the $1 million 1989 P quarter was a fluke, whispers began to surface. Other collectors quietly reported finding unusual strikes from the same year. Auction houses started receiving calls. Dealers began scanning every 1989 quarter they touched. The market grew hotter, the excitement sharper, the possibilities endless. Could there be dozens more out there? This uncertainty fuels the legend. And it's why collectors across the country are rushing to check their old coins. Every jar, every box, every dusty drawer could be hiding the next $1 million miracle. Think about it. How many times have you handed a quarter across a counter without a second thought? How many times have you let one roll under the couch, never to be seen again? And here's the twist that makes this story even more powerful: the 1989 P quarter isn't a flashy, obvious rarity. It doesn't glitter like gold or sparkle like a diamond. It looks plain. Ordinary. Just another quarter in the crowd. That's the trap. That's why so many people miss it. And that's why those who do spot it change their lives forever. First, check the mint mark, it must have the P from Philadelphia. Next, examine Washington's profile closely under light. Look for doubling in the details of his face, the letters, or the date. Flip the coin over and study the eagle. If it looks misaligned, off-center, or unusually sharp, you might be onto something. And finally, weigh the coin. A quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. If yours feels off, it may have been struck on the wrong planchet, and that could mean a payday beyond your wildest imagination. Every 1989 quarter you check is a lottery ticket you don't have to buy. The jackpot is already in your hands if you know what to look for. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, pause. Don't let that quarter slip by unnoticed. Don't throw it into the jar without a second glance. Because hidden in the coins you touch every day is the chance of a lifetime. The 1989 P Mint Mark Washington quarter worth up to $1.3 million is out there, waiting. Maybe in a collector's vault. Maybe in an auction house. Or maybe, just maybe, in your very own home. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but it sold for nearly $1.5 million, and here's the part no one tells you: it looks almost identical to the quarter sitting in your pocket right now. In 1983, the United States Mint in Philadelphia struck millions of Washington quarters. Ordinary coins, loose change meant to buy a cup of coffee or slip into a parking meter. But hidden among them was a mistake so rare, so dramatic, that it would take decades before collectors realized just how valuable it was. Imagine holding a plain quarter, the same coin you might toss onto the counter without even thinking. But what if that same coin held the power to change your life forever? What if it wasn't worth 25 cents, but instead more than $1 million? At first glance, it looked completely normal. George Washington's stoic profile on the front, the proud eagle on the back. Nothing unusual, nothing flashy. But in the shadow of the minting presses, something went terribly wrong. Collectors believe a small batch of quarters was struck with a rare flaw in the metal composition itself. Instead of the expected copper-nickel clad layers, certain quarters were accidentally produced on experimental planchets, thin pieces of metal that weren't supposed to be used for that year's coins. To the untrained eye, it looks like just another quarter. But to a skilled collector, it's a golden ticket. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. For years, these coins circulated quietly. They were handed over in grocery stores, dropped into vending machines, even forgotten in jars of loose change on kitchen counters across America. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared until one collector, decades later, discovered something odd about his 1983 quarter. He weighed it. It felt wrong. The edges shimmered differently in the light. And when experts finally tested it, their jaws dropped. This was no ordinary coin. It was a minting mistake, a hidden treasure that had survived the chaos of circulation. Word spread like wildfire. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were stunned. Suddenly, the 1983 Washington quarter was no longer just pocket change. It was the coin that could turn a lucky find into a $1 million miracle. But here's the twist most people don't know: not all rare quarters from 1983 are the same. Some are worth hundreds, some thousands, and only a tiny handful reach into the stratosphere of seven-figure value. So what makes the difference? It comes down to tiny details that most people miss. One such detail is the missing mint set release. In 1982 and 1983, the US Mint didn't release official mint sets for collectors. That meant many coins from those years entered circulation immediately, making high-grade survivors incredibly rare. Combine that with an unusual planchet or striking flaw, and you have the perfect storm, the kind of mistake that skyrockets value into the millions. Collectors rush to auctions, desperate to own one. And in one unforgettable sale, a pristine 1983 quarter, struck on a rare planchet, shattered expectations and climbed past $1 million. When the hammer fell, it was worth nearly $1.40 million. But this story gets even stranger. Another collector, an ordinary man who'd been sifting through loose change, stumbled upon his own 1983 quarter. He almost ignored it. But something about the color felt different. The edges didn't show the usual copper line. He took it to a dealer, and suddenly, this ordinary man was holding a coin worth more than most houses. His pocket change had become a life-changing discovery. Think about that. One small oversight at the Philadelphia Mint. One coin slipping past the inspectors. And decades later, that single mistake turned into a $1 million miracle. But here's where it gets even more intense: most of these quarters are still out there. Experts believe only a fraction have been found. The rest? Sitting in drawers, tucked into coin jars, jingling at the bottom of an old purse. And that means someone, maybe you, could stumble across one today. First, check the date. It must be 1983. Then, look for the tiny letter P on the front of the coin, right next to Washington's ponytail. That P stands for the Philadelphia Mint. But here's the crucial part: study the edges. A normal quarter will reveal a copper line sandwiched between silvery layers. The $1 million version often shows no copper line at all, because it was struck on a rare planchet. And next, check the weight. A standard quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. But these rare errors may come in heavier or lighter, depending on the metal composition. If yours feels off, don't ignore it. It could be the difference between 25 cents and $1 million. Collectors were shocked when they realized how many had slipped through the cracks. Dealers are rushing to secure even slightly unusual examples, because every new discovery confirms the legend. The 1983 Washington quarter is one of the greatest modern coin treasures in American history. But here's the haunting thought that keeps collectors awake at night: how many of these coins are still hiding in plain sight? How many are buried at the bottom of an old coffee can of change? How many are being spent right now at gas stations and grocery stores, their owners never knowing they just gave away a fortune? This is why, if you're serious about coin collecting, you cannot afford to ignore your 1983 quarters. Every one you check could be the one that changes your life. It doesn't just have to be flawless to be valuable. Even circulated examples with the right planchet error can command staggering prices. But the best preserved, untouched, high-grade examples? Those are the ones auction houses will fight over, the ones that can soar to $1.40 million. Collectors whisper about this coin the way treasure hunters talk about sunken gold. It is the miracle quarter, the one that hides in plain sight, disguised as pocket change, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and steady hands to uncover it. So tonight, when you dump out your change, when you glance at that handful of quarters, stop and look. Don't just assume they're worth 25 cents. Check the date. Look for the P. Study the edges. Feel the weight, because the truth is simple: this exact quarter could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up being spent at a gas station for 25 cents, but today, it's worth up to $1.5 million. It's the 2000 D-Mint Mark South Carolina State Quarter, a coin that millions of people held, spent, and ignored. Yet hidden among those ordinary quarters is a rare and shocking treasure that has left collectors speechless. And if you've got one, it could change your life forever. Back in the year 2000, the US Mint was in the middle of the now famous State Quarters program. For South Carolina, they designed a quarter showcasing the state outline, a star marking the capital, a palmetto tree, and the delicate Carolina wren. Over 1 billion of these coins were struck at the Denver Mint. Most were perfectly ordinary, destined to rattle around in change jars and vending machines. But a few were struck with mistakes so bizarre, so unexpected, that they would go on to become legendary among coin collectors. One collector, decades later, found a 2000 South Carolina quarter with a double strike so dramatic, the palmetto tree looked split in two. That single coin sold for hundreds of thousands. But the most jaw-dropping discovery? A unique error: a quarter struck on the wrong metal planchet, creating a coin that should not exist. When it hit the auction block, the bidding war was so intense that the room fell silent when the hammer dropped. At nearly $1.5 million, you see, in the minting process, blank discs of metal, called planchets, are fed into giant presses. Sometimes, a leftover blank from a different denomination, like a Lincoln cent or a Sacagawea dollar, slips through. When that happens, the design of the quarter is struck onto the wrong metal. Most of these errors are caught, but a few escape. And in 2000, one slipped into circulation. Imagine holding a coin that looks like a quarter but weighs less, or shines with the wrong color, and realizing it's worth more than a house, more than a retirement account, more than $1 million. Collectors were stunned. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on any 2000 South Carolina quarter with strange features. And stories began spreading like wildfire: pocket change discoveries, flea market miracles, coins found in dusty coffee cans. Each story added fuel to the fire, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One man claimed he almost spent his coin at a laundromat. He had tossed it in with a handful of quarters, only to notice it felt off. He pulled it back at the last second, and later learned it was one of the rarest error coins ever recorded. That single hesitation saved him over $1 million. Think about that for a moment. One small pause, one glance, one decision not to spend a coin, and it turned into a life-changing fortune. But this is where it gets even more fascinating. Not all valuable South Carolina quarters are dramatic wrong planchet errors. Some carry subtle details that most people miss. A slight doubling of the letters in South Carolina. A faint misalignment of the palmetto tree. Even tiny cracks in the die that left raised lines across the design. To the untrained eye, they look like imperfections. But to collectors, they're worth thousands. Most people who ever touched these quarters had no idea. They spent them at grocery stores, dropped them in parking meters, or left them sitting in drawers. Billions of coins. And yet, somewhere among them, one coin changed everything. But here's the detail that matters most, the one thing that makes the difference between an ordinary 25-cent piece and a coin worth $1 million. Weight. The wrong planchet errors will not weigh the same as a standard quarter. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams. If yours is lighter, or heavier, that's a sign of something extraordinary. That's the kind of clue that collectors live for. You've got a jar of quarters in your kitchen. You pour them out onto the table, the sound echoing across the room. One coin stands out, maybe because of its color, maybe because of its shine. You drop it on the scale, and the number staring back at you doesn't match. Your hands start to shake. Could this be it? Could this be the $1 million miracle coin hiding in plain sight? Dealers say that every time a rare state quarter hits an auction, they see a frenzy unlike anything else. Phones ringing, collectors whispering, everyone desperate to own a piece of history. And the South Carolina quarter is right at the center of that frenzy. But here's the real kicker: for years, people doubted that such valuable errors could exist in something as modern as the state quarters. They assumed big money was only in ancient coins or rare gold pieces. But this quarter proved them wrong. Modern coins, coins you've actually held, coins you've probably spent, can carry hidden fortunes, and here's how you can identify one yourself. Start with the mint mark. You're looking for the D just to the right of Washington's ponytail. Then check the weight. A digital scale that measures to the 1/10 of a gram is essential. Look at the details. Is the palmetto tree doubled, distorted, or faintly misaligned? Do the letters South Carolina look doubled or stretched? And finally, listen to the sound. A normal quarter has a distinctive ring when dropped on a hard surface. An error struck on the wrong planchet will often sound dull, flat, or just wrong. Once you know what to look for, you'll never see pocket change the same way again. And that's the truth. Because inside your wallet, inside your change jar, inside the handful of coins you might leave on a counter, could be the one coin that transforms your future. So before you spend another quarter, before you slide it into a vending machine or drop it in a parking meter, take a closer look. The 2000D South Carolina quarter has already shocked the world once. And it could shock you, too.